Show is brought to you by Johnston Group, Vittorio Rossi, Trans-Canada Brewing, Lou Ferlin, Cambrian Credit Union, and Homefield.
Okay, sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I hope my computer was picking up on that. I hope you are hearing what I was saying here. I, gu- I gu- I guess I'm going to start over. Let's just start over right from the very beginning. I just got the note. I wasn't reading the comments. When I'm delivering, it's hard to read the comments. Let's start over. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, everybody. I'm about to be joined by Ken Weave from Sportsnet. Together, we're Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after what I would say, if the game itself is not the low point of the season, I think when you take the inactivity that happened during the trade deadline today, you have to think that this is the darkest day of the Winnipeg Jets 2022-23 season. It's hard to know where this team is headed at this point. It's hard to know what they're capable of. If we're going to look at this game quickly, and I'm going to get through this really quickly here, because I already got through it once. Just nobody heard it. That's the issue. But I don't know. You take a period's worth of penalties almost by the Winnipeg Jets in this game is a clear indication to me that the Jets were just they can't keep up with the Edmonton Oilers in a game like that. As bad as this game is it any worse than what we saw from the Kings in the game before that, where they got shut out 4-0? This is a team that seems lost right now. Now, it's interesting because the first period I took a look at it and I thought I was starting to see some signs of a Jets resurrection. They come out of that period down just 1-0. I didn't think, or I was starting to think that maybe we're starting to see them come around. Maybe we're starting to see something from them. I thought they started the second well, But I think what we're seeing here is just a fragile team at this stage. I don't think there's any other way to say it. I mean, you talk about that 4-0 game they lost after being called out by their coach and not responding. And then you talk about the next night where they go up against an LA Kings team. Yes, they get to a shootout. I don't think that's a game they're in if LA's goaltender isn't absolutely atrocious to the degree that the general manager watched that game and said, we need to make a trade right now, which is exactly what they did as that game was ending, going out to get a goaltender in that situation. But I mean, you saw it in that game. You saw the fragility of the Jets in that game as they blew two multiple goal leads in that game. And here tonight, what I saw was again signs of the Winnipeg Jets pushing in the first period, getting into the second, starting with a push, and then just collapsing as soon as things didn't start going their way. When you see back-to-back goals like what we saw there, there was just some of those goals where I think the Jets just were not ready to play. They had not recovered from being scored on by the previous goal. This is a team that is lost right now. Quite honestly, they're lost. A lot of you are going to be saying that it was the responsibility of the general manager today to help this team find themselves. You may be right. You may be absolutely right. I know that it's something we're going to talk about right now. I think Ken Weave's going to have a lot to say about that. But listen, whatever we're seeing here right now, I don't know that it would be fixed with an influx of 4, 5, 6. How many players would it take to get this team turned around at this stage? That's a question we can talk about. We can tackle it. Let's get at it. Let's get the main man in here. My main man, Ken Weave, man with the best music in the business. Here comes Kenny. Ken, I'm not sure what you saw out there today. I know that there's a feeling out there in Jetsland that this season is lost. I know that there's a feeling out there. I think it's kind of honestly deserved the way that this day went. I know that I had said on our previous shows that it was my belief that the Winnipeg Jets, the team, hadn't earned anything from their general manager, that they'd lost the faith of their general manager, and that's why I wasn't expecting much moves other than what we saw from Nino Niederreiter. I think that's what we saw. They went out and got another player similar to Nino Niederreiter in Nemestikov, gave up a similar return. That's essentially what I thought was going to happen. It's what I said on this show. But I have to admit, even I was a little surprised by what we saw from the team today. That one move, boy, oh boy, I think a lot of people are finding it hard to swallow, and a game that follows it up like that, extremely hard to swallow.
Yeah, no doubt about that, Sean. Very poor effort by the Winnipeg Jets. It looked like a team that, in some ways, felt like its coach quit on them, 14, 15 months ago, and I think today they felt they needed more from their general manager. Could this be a coincidence and a one-off? Sure, but we're going to find out pretty quickly, Sean, if it is something that has some residue. Well, no, I'm just saying in terms of getting smoked one-sided. I mean, it's not a one-off because the evidence has been mounting. 5 in a row, 7 of 8, 15 wins in their last 32 games. I mean, this is not something new for the Winnipeg Jets, the struggling part, the losing part. But getting smoked that once, I mean, people can say what they want. This is not a 6-3 hockey game. This is not a 6-3 hockey game. This is a absolute blowout, a one-sided beatdown, It was 5-0 at one point. Great. The Jets got a couple of garbage time goals. Who cares? I mean, that is absolutely not a good enough effort by the Winnipeg Jets. And they're going to have to be better in 24 hours or else they will find themselves in an even bigger mess. It's a mess right now for the Jets. They're 5 points up on the Calgary Flames with 20 games to go. Both teams struggling. There's no doubt about it. Neither team has been consistent enough, but right now the Jets are having the tailspin that really struggled for the Calgary Flames earlier on this season. And it's up to them to pull themselves out of it. There's no cavalry here coming in. Yes, the Jets are missing some players. That's the way it goes. Teams miss players. Guys are hurt. You got to find a way to get things done. I have to believe that this was some emotional letdown from the Winnipeg Jets in terms of what happened today. I think the Jets looked around the Central Division and Western Conference and saw a bunch of teams that helped improve or get improvements that really helped them, including right down to the wire, where the Minnesota Wild added a Stanley Cup champion and then added a guy in John Klingberg who can help their power play, a guy who made the Stanley Cup final. It's something that is probably disturbing to a number of players. And this isn't just about this year, Sean. One of the points I've been making the last week or so, there are pending UFAs in 2024. We've been talking about this till we've been blue in the face. There are pending unrestricted free agents who, if they haven't already decided what their plan was going to be, I think they got a message today about what the future holds. And it doesn't look very bright for several of those players. At least it can't look bright in their lens, right? If you're Mark Scheifele and you're Connor Hellebuck, you thought you probably needed more help. And like I said, this is not solely on the general manager, but Kevin doubled down on this core, and today he told us he believed in them. But what we've also seen, Sean, is that the actions didn't necessarily match the words. Kevin's right. He invested a lot in this core group in terms of moving draft picks to get them some help in previous years. But this year they only moved a second and a fourth, which was your expectation the whole time. They weren't going to mortgage the future. And I don't think they should have mortgaged the future, but they should have moved a few more pieces in terms of trying to help their roster improve. I'm not saying Luke Schenn would have solved any of the problems that we saw today, Sean, but a third-round pick is not mortgaging a team or an organization's future. And Luke Schenn made a physical impact in his debut with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the Jets, what have we been talking about? Not a lot of responses in games where the Jets have laid eggs over the last week. That's something you can count on from Luke Schenn, a guy who is a winner. He is a high-character player. He plays a physical game. Today we saw one scrum from the Jets. That's it. That's not enough. And now this is very simple now. The Jets can't spend a lot of time sitting around saying that their general manager should have done more. Now it's up to them to show what they're made of and what they're going to be looking at going forward, because they're smart enough to know that not a lot of those guys are going to be back under the current circumstances. And there's other people that are probably not going to be back, Sean. And that's the other part. I mean, Kevin Cheveldayoff neither confirming nor denying that Logan Stanley asked for a trade was basically confirmation, was it not?
Oh, God,
I mean, if he didn't do it, why didn't he just say he didn't do it? That was very confusing to me. I understand the Jets don't want to take their inner discussions public, but it was just a strange situation there as well. And like I said with Hustler on Winnipeg Sports Talk, just because a player or a first-round draft pick asks for a trade, that doesn't make it a priority item. But the Jets already have a long laundry list of what they need to get accomplished in the summertime, and not moving on from Logan Stanley or finding a player to be, finding a forward or finding a defenseman that might be something else to help their roster, that just kicks the can down the road as well. So it's a dark day for the Jets. It's one of their worst games of the year, and there's a lot of things that will need to be settled here in the next little while. And quite frankly, it's hard to find, like, we're going to do our best to provide answers, but there's not a lot of clear answers when it comes to what the Jets are going to do down the stretch here, because they've been struggling for a long time. And when a team gets that soundly outplayed by a team that they were within 2 points of going into the game, they got outclassed and they got outworked, and it wasn't pretty.
Okay, sorry. Before we get into this, let's do some of our things here. We're not exactly dressed up in the nines here tonight. It's going to get better, people. We promise you. The next 4 games are Sportsnet games. Tomorrow night, starting with the Hockey Night in Canada, as the rematch comes against the Edmonton Oilers, and then the next 3 games after that, all the way until the next Hockey Night in Canada down in Florida when the Jets go to see Paul Maurice. Who would have thought? I don't know. Earlier in the season, who would have thought the Jets would be in the position they're in, heading down there? But we'll be looking like $1 million at those games, because we will most definitely be dressed up in our gear from Frankie and the boys down in Vittorio Rossi. If you want to look like $1 million, head on down to see Frankie and the boys. Go on down to Corden Avenue, Vittorio Rossi. It's the place to be if you want to look dressed up. Ken, let's get this going here with the Lamplighter. I'm not sure. I think this is probably a night where the other team is most definitely deserving of this award. I think just trying to force it on, like you said, garbage time goals for the Winnipeg Jets is probably not doing the Lamplighter the honor that it deserves. What's your Lamplighter on the night?
Well, I'm going to go with Leon Draisaitl with the straight shelf, and I'm only going with it as the Lamplighter because of the due diligence required by Draisaitl, who initially knocked the net off its pegs, calmly went over and put it back on the pegs, then got the puck, waited for David Riddick to go down, and then roofed his shot in about the was it 6 inches? It's probably closer to 3 inches available to him to roof the shot. So for me, it wasn't the prettiest of the goals, but it was, the degree of difficulty was very high. So to me, I think I'm going to be going with the Draisaitl straight shelf, even though there were prettier passing plays, there were better bar downs, but the extra effort required by Leon Draisaitl to score that goal would be the one that I'm going to choose as the Lamplighter. Somebody asked me on Twitter, is that a scenario? I wonder if that was a scenario, Sean, where do you think Rick Bowness was would that be considered a missed stoppage? Like when the puck goes into the netting, like the fact that they allowed the time for Draisaitl to put the net back on while they had possession of the puck. I mean, I guess they didn't ever lose possession. It's not like the Jets had possession. So I'm not sure. I mean, it was something where, and I'm not trying to make light of this scenario, but I honestly wondered, in terms of the rules, would that be something that Rick, if that's a tie game and not a blowout, do you have to use a coach's challenge there? And if you did use a coach's challenge, is it something that is actually challengeable? I'm being serious. I have no idea.
No, I think the way it goes is that the Edmonton Oilers, it is their right to waste as much time as they want in an effort to not score a goal, because even if it goes in the net is off. But that said, by that same token, if they want to take the effort to try and get the net back on, they're allowed to do that. To be honest, I thought it was hilarious when I saw the players. It was hilarious. But then for it to come back later and him basically correct the net and kind of give it a tap and say, "I'll be right back," and
that was incredible.
I got to say, too, the one thing about it that was funny was when Riddick, I mean, there's barely any space there, right? Like, that is
bananas. That shot is bananas.
And David Riddick, how he just freezes afterwards, almost to accentuate the idea that he's like, hey, cameraman, get a shot of this. There's like literally not enough space for this puck to get in there. That is no doubt Lamplighter worthy. I know that there's not a lot of people out there we're going to be happy with the idea of the Lamplighter going to an Edmonton Oiler, especially those whose roots with the Winnipeg Jets go all the way back to the 80s and 90s. But no doubt in my mind, that goal was Lamplighter worthy. Share with us your Lamplighter. I see some of you are already doing it. If you do so, you will automatically be entered to win a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale from our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for Kenny and Renny to send you your TransCanada Brewing Company Lamplighter pack, 8-pack of frosty, delicious Lamplighter Amber Ale, head on down to their tap room at 1290 Kenniston. Great pizza, great beer. They got it all down there. I was just hanging out with someone tonight, and they told me they went there earlier this week and were raving about the spot. If you go there, you'll be raving about it too. Absolutely excellent place. And share with us that. And Ken, do you have with
quickly
you
before we transformation action here for the folks who are interested in joining Sean and myself at TransCanada Brewing Company on March 18th for the afternoon tilt against the Nashville Predators. You can get your tickets at the link that is provided in the chat room that is highlighted here, but we will also just leave that in the chat for folks to check out.
Okay, and I wanted to announce our...
Oh, you got it.
Announce our winner of the Lamplighter for last week's, and that would be Scooter. So Scooter, I don't know that I've seen Scooter in the chat room. Hopefully Scooter's not one of those people who gets frustrated with Jets losses and doesn't show up afterwards, because if Scooter doesn't hear about this and direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds and give me Scooter's full name and an email address for me to send their voucher, Scooter will not be able to cash in on his frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale. So, Scooter, you don't want that to happen. This is why, people, you got to keep coming back. Scooter, you're on the clock, and it's not a long clock because the game's right at it tomorrow night. Ken, let's move on to the Johnston Group Got You Covered play of the game. Is there anything?
Well, some folks aren't going to like it because of the turnover that came on either the first or second shift after. But the fact that Dylan DeMello got up from literally a boot to the head, accidentally, of course, from Connor McDavid after DeMello was called for tripping McDavid on the play itself is my got you covered play of the game. There weren't a ton of other options available in this game, and to be clear, I'm not making light of the situation. I am applauding the player for coming back after what was a very scary moment. Anyone who's been involved in hockey and has a skate blade coming at their head knows how scary that is. And the fact that he came back into the game is an impressive feat in itself. That there was an error that happened after that, I mean, big deal. That things happen, errors happen. It's not like he was trying to turn the puck over. So the fact that he came back for me is the We've Got You Covered play of the game, sponsored by the OGs, the good folks over at the Johnston Group for me.
Excellent stuff from the OGs, the Johnston Group. You won't find two businesses with the same challenges, but you will find 30,000 businesses with Chambers Plan employee benefits proudly administered by our friends at Johnston Group. Chambers Plan is Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits because it evolves with the way you work and live. The plan is run as a not-for-profit designed specifically to support small businesses, and its unique pooling strategy keeps rates stable so you won't have any surprises at your next renewal. Chambers Plan now comes with professional consulting on key financial, legal, and HR issues, and Teledoc telemedicine services are included with every health option. See how Chambers Plan can benefit your business by visiting chamberplan.ca. All right, Ken, I'm thinking to myself, when Rick Bowness comes out after the game and speaks, and I was just thinking about hearing him before the game in the pregame interview that he did with Dan Robertson. I'm thinking about everything that I'm kind of seeing from him lately, and I'm just wondering where there is to go from here. I mean, if you're taking a look at this team, I think he's tried all kinds of different things. I think he's tried tough love. I think he's tried challenging this team, trying to get a rise. It just feels like, and I don't know, I mean, he's been around the game for a long time, but I don't know how many different ways you can try and get a rise out of your team and fail to do so. I don't know where you go after you challenge your team and say, well, we'll see what they've got next game, and then they show up with nothing the next game. And then you kind of soft pedal and you stay away from the honesty, the blunt, brutal honesty that he has after a game like that. And then you come out and you try again the next day. I take a look at this team and I'm starting to wonder where the spark is going to come from. Where's the next thing you go if you are, or where's the next place you go if you are Rick Bowness to try and get this team going at this stage, because they look lost and he looks like a guy who is surprised that a lot of the tricks that he has had at his disposal over the course of his career just do not seem to be working at this moment.
Yeah. This is why Rick said the other day that you can't be going after your team taking shots at them every game, because people start. I'm not saying the Jets have tuned him out by any stretch. That's not what I'm saying. But the reason why you don't see coaches as direct as us in the media, as fans in the audience would always love to expect, is because players don't respond to that type of behavior on occasion. I mean, the Jets have said they want to be coached, and right now, Sean, there's no other way to explain it, as they're ignoring the ideas that the coaching staff is presenting. What else could you say? I mean, today they got outworked. They were second to almost every puck. Their structure was, I don't know, missing in action, and their puck management was dreadful. So this is a team that had committed to playing defensive hockey. They were a top 5 team in terms of goals against. That's gone by the wayside. Connor Hellebuyck was covering up a bunch of errors early on in the year again. In his last, and I'm not, to be clear, I'm not blaming Connor Hellebuyck. The Jets have allowed 5, and 4 against Connor Hellebuyck in his last 3 starts, and he's been pulled in 2 of the 3. That's a disturbing trend. What would you do tomorrow? I think Hellebuyck has to start, but
tomorrow,
yes. Isn't that why? Do you think he pulled him, or do you think he pulled him because he thinks Riddick is going to start? You get him some extra touches because you start him tomorrow?
The last time he pulled him in a situation like that, he said when he was asked why he pulled him, he said it's because it was enough, is what he said. It wasn't strategy to get a guy to keep a guy from getting tired. It was him essentially saying, like, we hung him out enough. There was no point in him being in there and taking any more of a beating in that situation. So I'm not saying that what you're suggesting isn't happening. It could be that. But what I am saying is we've seen in the past that this wouldn't have been him saying, maybe it's strategic at this stage to get Connor Hellebuyck out of this so he can be ready for tomorrow night. That may have been what it is, Ken, but it also may very well have been him saying, you know what, that's it. I'm not letting this team do this to their starting goaltender and get him out of there. But it's also almost rewarding of the effort of that team that just hung out their goaltender to put that guy in and disrupt the schedule that you've established for your team. David Riddick was going to play Saturday night. This was all set up weeks ago. And to disrupt that schedule, to reward your team for hanging that goalie out to dry, well, let's give it another try all over again. I mean, I could see the tough love style that we've come to know from Rick Bowness showing itself in David Riddick being in net tomorrow night. I would not be one bit surprised if that was the case. Now, if this was Paul Maurice, it most definitely would have been that. He would have been getting him out of there saying, we've lost this game, let's get him some rest so we can get him in tomorrow and have another stab at it. I don't know the answers, Ken. Rick Bowness doesn't know the answers. Clearly, Kevin Cheveldayoff doesn't know the answers. And so I wonder if Rick Bowness just gets into a situation where he's like, right is right. That's the only way for me to get out of this. Whether or not this, like you said, whether or not this team is tuning me out or not, there's right things to do. And the right thing to do is follow the system that I set up a long time ago to get this goalie in net, not to try and adjust to a team that is not trying or not working. But I wanted to switch gears quickly and just go into what you'd said. Okay,
the reason why I would play Hellebuck, the Jets have lost 5 in a row. In a lot of ways, it's a season-defining weekend. I don't know how you cannot start your starting goalie. The fact that if Connor had faced 40 shots, like I agree it was enough today, but it was 4 goals and 24 shots. So I don't think he's too tired to play. Sean, I know where you're coming from, but based on the fact that Riddick has had some bad hiccups in the last 2 games, can they run the risk of losing 6 in a row going into Monday's game against San Jose? I'm just asking. I'm not saying that he won't do it. I just don't. I'm
just saying this. You know what? I think there is a risk. There is a massive risk in starting Connor Hellebuck again tomorrow, because if the Edmonton Oilers come out and do to the Jets again tomorrow night with Connor Hellebuck in net what they did tonight, which they very well could, the way we've seen these Jets playing here, don't you risk at that stage just popping whatever bubble Connor Hellebuck had going on with this team and absolutely blowing it up with 19 games left, where you just go and see that, like what if tomorrow they go and they say, we're putting Connor Hellebuck in because we need a charge. It's an important weekend. Let's put him back in. And if your team fails to show up at that time too, after you took those special measures, and they hang their goalie out to dry and he gets lit up for a second game in a row, where does that leave this team? Like I'm telling you right now, if I was coach, and this whole if I was coach thing is like, I'm going to say this again. Rick Bowness forgot more about hockey this morning than I've known about it my entire life. So my opinion is worthless on this, but I will say this. I would be putting the backup goaltender in tomorrow night, because I would say that was the plan. This is what we're doing. We're following the plan. You're going to go out and you're going to do what you've done for the majority of this season and play well when the backup is in, and we're going to move on and we're going to march forward, because to me, putting Connor Hellebuck in is like, in case of emergency, break glass, sirens wailing, flames everywhere. And if it doesn't work out tomorrow, I don't know what you do to this team psychologically. I think you shatter this team psychologically if that happens tomorrow, if they're not psychologically shattered already.
Well, my quick retort would be, I understand where you're coming from, but what's the difference if it's Riddick or Hellebuck? I mean, if Riddick gets lit up, well, does that do anything else for me? Hellebuck at least has a chance to steal the game. Right now, I'm not saying Riddick can't, but he hasn't been as good as he was earlier on in the year. So I think that the Jets owe it to themselves and to try to salvage where their season is at, to give themselves the best chances playing their number one guy. And I understand if they don't do it, but that's the way that I would come at it from. But I also understand where you're coming from. But they can't be worried about sensitive feelings or morale. I mean, they're getting to the place where, if for example, the Jets lose tomorrow and Calgary wins, it's a 3-point deficit for them. And even on the flip side, Nashville is 6 back with 3 games in hand, and they play Chicago tomorrow night. So I understand the Jets' biggest problem right now is themselves, and they can't worry about the other teams. But they need to start getting into desperation mode here, because if they don't, suddenly they're going to be looking up at teams, and then they're going to be wondering what's going on here.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, we know my feelings on it. I'm not going to go. Okay, you said this earlier on. You said that the Winnipeg Jets either look like or said are ignoring their coaching staff. I've got to respond to that, because I've noticed there's a lot of people.
Sorry, I said it looks like that. I mean, they're not playing their structure, and they're not protecting the puck, and their power. I mean, they got a power play goal tonight, but it hasn't looked good.
I didn't collect a lot of the comments, but I mean, people know what I said about this yesterday. I said that the Winnipeg Jets down the stretch showed that they weren't, I don't want to say worthy, but they weren't deserving of their GM taking and moving massive assets that had to do with the future in order to get this organization going. I know you didn't say that, but I did notice in this chat room, there's a lot of people who are entirely okay with Kevin Cheveldayoff not making moves because of this exact idea. And I guess I would say this: if it looks like the Winnipeg Jets are ignoring their coaching staff and ignoring the model that they're supposed to be playing, isn't this maybe further proof? Like if I'm Kevin Cheveldayoff right now and I'm sitting down and I made the decision to not do anything because I looked at this team and I thought, this is what I'm going to invest in. This is what I'm going to send futures out the window for. Don't you think that looking, despite what he said about having faith in this team and all this kind of stuff, and boy, oh boy, I don't buy that for a second, that he looked at this team and thought, I don't need to do anything. This team is capable of doing exactly what we want it to do. I don't think there's a single person in Winnipeg who buys that line, a single person in Jets land who thinks that that's accurate. But if I'm Kevin Cheveldayoff and I did make the decision not to invest in this group because I've got serious doubts about this group, isn't a performance like tonight where it looks like your team is tuning out or ignoring your coaching staff, isn't that evidence that you did the right thing today?
Well, I mean, it might be, but isn't there a bigger issue? You still got to fix the problem. So I understand if he didn't want to move mountains here, but eventually, if there's going to be issues in terms of roster reconstruction, why not get started on them today? And I understand, I understand your premise in terms of saying, well, maybe they have enough to get themselves into the playoffs and they can get themselves a gate or two. But if standing pat means missing the playoffs, that's an opportunity lost, in my humble opinion, whether you believe in the team or not. If you are the numbers say that you should be able to make the playoffs in the last 21 games based on how they've played over the course of the year. So that's why I said there was an obligation to try to improve the team further. And quite frankly, I like the addition of Vladislav Nemesnikov, but he didn't address all the needs. The Jets need to upgrade their defense core. We've been saying that all year long, and they didn't. So to me, that's a missed opportunity. You don't agree that the Jets needed help on the back end? I mean, he said they identified the needs. One of the needs that they have is to have a better defense core.
So I couldn't agree more. I mean, I entirely agree with that. But to me, that's not the question. The question is whether or not it's a good investment to try and fix that. What I ask again, what defenseman were the Winnipeg Jets going to go out and grab that was going to fix what we saw tonight or the other night or the night before that, or basically since the middle of January? Like at one point, there's a responsibility on the team to make that push. And so here, I wanted to ask that question because you'd said this, and I know that some people had said this in the chat room. Tony Valeri is one of them. He says, "Why not start moving assets now?" I think there's an obvious answer to this. If you are selling right now, if the Winnipeg Jets decide that they're going to sell right now in this moment, they're only selling to half the league. You've taken half your customers and entirely eliminated them. Why? Because only teams in the playoffs are buying. There's 16 teams in the playoffs. There's 16 teams out of the playoffs. The Jets are one of the teams in the playoffs. So if they're selling, you can take one out. Now that means there's only 15 teams that you can sell to in this moment. And most of them are cash strapped or up against the cap and can't fit the kind of assets that the Winnipeg Jets would be looking to move. To your point, Ken, I think that the numbers suggest that the Winnipeg Jets are going to make the playoffs. And if they do, they get this playoff gate that everyone is talking about. They get there. Maybe they figure this out. Maybe they go on a run. The whole idea of like anything can happen in the playoffs, right? Maybe they get there. Maybe they get through a series. Maybe they get through two. Maybe they get 6 or 7 games. But the numbers tell us right now, and the Calgary Flames' inability to win. And if you go check the Calgary Flames schedule, it's a murderer's row of a schedule for the most of the rest of the season as it is. The numbers suggest that the Winnipeg Jets are going to make the playoffs. So if you don't need to give up significant assets to get a team to the playoffs, to get the playoff gate, then it gets you into the offseason. And now you go into the draft or the offseason, and now you're dealing with 31 other teams. If you get to the stage, and I think I said this on the show, Ken, if I didn't, it's time for me to drop this. But I didn't think that Kevin Cheveldayoff was making moves today. I said he's good. If he's going to make moves, he's going to make something similar to what he did with Nino Niederreiter. Well, he went and got Nino Niederreiter for a second-round pick. He went out and he got Nemesnikov for a fourth-round pick. That's exactly what they did. Well, my idea of what happens next, I don't think there is any way to look at this other than Kevin Cheveldayoff did not have faith in this team. He didn't invest in it because he doesn't have faith in this team. And all the people who want to get mad about that can take a look at the Jets' performance here tonight, their performance leading up to this, and you're not in the position where you're a general manager who has to make these decisions. It's a hard job being a GM. I'm not defending Kevin Cheveldayoff. This is the core that he built. This is the core that he's kept together for years and years. There's a responsibility in that. But if it is your job to make this decision, which is a heavy-weighted decision, you have to take all the information you have available, and the information made available to him is that the Jets look like a team that aren't going to be able to do much in the playoffs. So he makes the decisions he makes. He doesn't sell right now because he's got more people to sell to in the summertime. He can maximize whatever he's going to do, and my take on it is that we have very likely at the end of this year seen the end of the faith in this organization, in its core players. And that means all the players who after next season are slated to leave, the Pierre-Luc Dubois, the Connor Hellebucks, the Mark Scheifele's, the Blake Wheelers, I think that those guys go on the block. That's exactly what I think happens, and they try and have the biggest garage sale maybe we've ever seen in the NHL before. Because other than that, Ken, if they don't do that, then none of this makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. They lost faith in the core. They're going to let them try and get to the playoffs, try and pick up some playoff revenue and gates. They didn't give up future assets to do it because they think they're going to need those future assets right away. And then they're going to try and turn around and do a New York Rangers style rebuild where they keep some really good core pieces like Josh Morrissey and Nick Ehlers and Kyle Connor. So you've got some scoring guys, you've got some good defense, keep some real players, but then try and take those other players we're talking about and turn them around for significant assets coming back the other way and try and do a quick turnover rebuild and get this fan base excited in the stuff that's going to happen here. And I don't know that it's a bad plan in the idea, Ken, that you can see just in our chat room and talking with Jets fans over the years, how frustrated people are in this core. People feel this core has given up on their fan base, and the fan base, a segment of them at least, have given up on this core. And if that's the case, you're trying to get a future where you can get everybody involved, a team that works hard, a team that pushes, a team that represents the city of Winnipeg, a city where people go to work every day and grind it out. And that's what you're trying to do here. That's what I think happens next. That's why you don't make those moves and tear down today, because you get the playoffs. But also, this isn't the time to have the kind of sale that they want to have.
Yeah, it's a risky proposition. And I would say it this way. If that's what happens, I think it's going to be a challenging time on the horizon. I don't know the appetite for a full rebuild. And if that were the case, and we've discussed this and we'll discuss it again, the Jets obviously felt that they needed to give another run with this core with a different coaching staff to see if it made a big difference. And it made a big difference early, but it's not making a big difference now. So that either means the core is unwilling or unable to make the necessary changes. So the issue for me, Sean, in terms of having this large, massive garage sale, even though there will be a lot of appealing pieces at that auction or garage sale, based on the limited number of trades that have been made in terms of player for player, I think it's a risky proposition to suddenly try to trade 3 or 4 core pieces off and to the highest bidders, and maybe you package a couple pieces together if some team has the ability to add those pieces, or maybe give them long-term deals. But let's use Calgary as an example, Sean. Calgary had to move some of their Calgary essentially had to do a couple of things that the Jets would be considering under the plan that you have proposed.
I think looked the Jets like they tried to do what Calgary did last year.
And Calgary got some good players in return, but it's not working out. So what if you trade those pieces and it doesn't work out again? So that to me is the risky part of the potential plan. It's not to say it won't happen or it might not happen, but there are risks involved with that as well. And the other risk is, like I just said, if the Jets miss the playoffs now, but they don't miss far enough that they could have been in the lottery for Connor Bedard or Adam Fantilli or one of the other great prospects Sam Cosentino talked about with us on our program yesterday, Now they kind of missed, like the doubling down is going to cause them to miss a major window in what most people are calling one of the best drafts in the last decade.
Yeah.
So before you even get to the sell-off, there's another swing and a miss in a lot of regards.
But hold on a second. If they do it at the draft, I was thinking about exactly what you're saying earlier on tonight. If they go do it at the draft, like I'm saying, and they open themselves up to other teams, the interesting part about this draft is so many firsts have been moved that there's teams that have collected a number of these. Well, maybe you can take a team that is trying to, accelerate their process and move some of those players to teams like that. And maybe you can get first round picks in this draft this year. Like that's why I'm saying it makes sense for them if they're doing what I think that they're going to do. That's why it makes sense for them to go do this at the draft right now. And that makes even better sense because if you're dealing with teams with high first round picks, like here's the deal. If you went out and made the trades that I'm talking about to teams that are in the playoffs right now, and you make that deal to the Boston Bruins, well, the pick that you get in the first round is probably going to be in the 30s, right?
Right.
Whereas this way, if you go in and you can sell a team that already has a lot of young assets and say, we can give you some pieces that will accelerate your process and teach the, I'm thinking of like an Anaheim Ducks type team or something like that. If you can get them something of significance that they can take right now and run with, then maybe you either pry away some of those assets that are coming up, or B, some of the big picks, which are going to mean a lot more than the ones that you get from the playoff teams that are going to be giving you late 20s and early 30s picks.
That premise is sound, but the only problem with it, Sean, is that most of those, I understand there's only one team getting Bedard, but if you're in the top 5 at the end of the lotto, you're not in a position where 1 year of Mark Scheifele or 1 year of Connor Hellebuck gets you to where you want to be going unless you can sign them long term.
Well, you do not get the assets you need in return from those players unless you can figure out a sign and trade. That's it. You have to maximize those players. So you basically have to find a team that they would be interested in signing with and get that team on board with it, and then have that team give you the whole enchilada because they're playing not just for a year of that player, but they're paying and they're getting that player for a significant amount of time. That's the only way it works. It's what I'm saying here isn't easy, but here's the one thing. I know a lot of people are thinking that I'm crazy to talk about this, but Ken, we know that the Winnipeg Jets investigated dismantling their core this past summer. Why is it so crazy for them to try and dismantle it this summer all over again? They tried this already. In fact, I'm pretty sure some of the players that I pointed out here, they tried to move this summer. So why is it so crazy that last year they tried to do this, didn't like the prices on the market, and then came back and said, well, let's try and see if it's the coach. And now if they're finding out that it's not the coach and they know that the mix that they have here isn't working, none of it matters what the prices are. You have to try something different. You have to. If they were willing to try it last year, I think they're willing to try it over again this year. I know what I'm saying sounds crazy to people. It's not so crazy when the idea is that they tried to do this last summer and didn't go into all in to pull it off, wanted to give it one last try. It's not a crazy idea that they would do something like this. They already tried to do it last summer, people.
Yeah, my issue, Sean, is that this team is struggling to draw, and I don't see an appetite for a rebuild. But I think what you're saying in terms of maybe the Jets needing to change what their team looks like or the style that they play, in some ways I wonder if the Jets want to go back to being a little bit more of a lunch bucket team that's hard to play against. Of course, they needed to upgrade their skill side, but right now, the mounting evidence has shown the Jets have gone too far to the skilled side, and they don't defend well enough, and they're not hard to play against anymore on a lot of nights when they're not skating and they're not aggressive and they're not jumping up and having a third man high and all of those things. So it literally is a monumental time. This summer will be a monumental time in terms of the direction that the Jets are going to be going moving forward. I thought last year that was going to be the case, but they're running out of runway. in terms of needing to make big time decisions on a number of important players. And if some of those players aren't going to want to be around here for the long term, or a lot of them look around and say, I don't know how I can sign up for this any longer, then they're going to have to replace those players. So that's not going to be an easy task. And the Jets will also be running the risk, and I know people hate talking about it, but they will also run the risk of a Teemu Selanne deal that yielded the likes of Chad Kilger and Oleg Tverdovsky. And that's a major concern. And the Jets are in no position where they can just take, a number of assets. They need to get players. Like, they have 2 top centers right now, and they have a checking line center who, yes, I understand it's been 35 games without a goal, but they're strong down the middle for the most part. And if they lose both Scheifele and Dubois, they are going to need to replace 2 high-end centers that produce quite a bit of offense. And that's not an easy thing to do, because one of them was the first ever draft pick, and he came at 7th overall, and the other guy that they got was a 3rd overall pick. So if the Jets aren't going to be picking in the top 5 unless they crash and burn down the stretch and get incredibly lucky. So it's risky here. And this isn't to say the Jets they could wake up and there's enough time for them to have a course correction, but right now they're not playing well enough to have a course correction that would allow them to win multiple rounds. So that's also a problem.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a big challenge for the coaching staff and for the players themselves. I mean, no player is happy with what's been happening here. Well, that's not what we've seen. I mean, they're disappointed. But what are they going to do about it down the stretch?
I don't know. All I know is this is like the one thing that I keep coming back to is, what would Kevin Cheveldayoff have had to do with his lineup to solve what we are seeing, right? He went and he got too many players. How many players did he need to get? How significant of players did he need to get? I think that to if the answer here was the Jets needed to use today and the lead up to this to fix what we're seeing on the ice right now and go for it. It's easy to just say go for it and go all in and get it, but like we've seen a situation, what did Boston need? They needed something very specific. They needed a defenseman. They went out and they got Dmitry Orlov, and he's just absolutely crushing it for them right now. What did Toronto need against a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning? They needed to get grittier. They needed like a shutdown guy. They needed that guy who's going to make them hard to play against but still have that offensive edge. So they went out and got Ryan O'Reilly. Like, these are very clear, defined things that that these teams needed. And at this stage, with the Jets doing what they were doing, I'm going to tell you right now, we talked about the Jets like needing, to add up front. They needed something on the back end, but how much did they need? Did Jacob Chychrun coming here entirely solve the Jets blue line? Did it? I don't know that it did. I don't know that you didn't need, Shen on top of that, right? And my belief is the Winnipeg Jets, if they're going to survive in the playoffs, needed to create a top 9 scoring, needed to move Adam Lowry to the 4th line, and needed to create a hard grinding 4th line, and then 3 lines capable of scoring. Well, what did they need to turn this team into a top 9 scoring team? Was it 2 significant players? Is Nino Niederreiter even one of the players that you put in that situation? I come back to this, and I know I've kind of circled back on something that we were talking about here before, but everyone's kind of I can hear it in the way you're talking tonight. I can hear it in the way I'm talking tonight. Our conversation is very stilted. We keep stopping because I think the both of us here are a little bit like at a loss for words at what we're seeing here right now, but none of this is easy. This has become such a tough situation because Kevin Cheveldayoff's job was extremely hard, a situation that people keep pointing out, and they're right to point out, and it's correct, a situation he created. He wanted to go back and run this back this year. He created this situation, but his team did not make it easy on him to find what they needed to succeed. They made it easy for him to say, listen, I'm not sure I want to invest in this group. And at the same time, if you're this group that are thinking we've got a window, you created a window for us in 2018, lasting to 2024. Why are we bailing on this window early? Then you entirely run the risk of having these players, some of these players, tune out and say, like, if our management isn't behind us, I'm not sure that we're behind this team. This is ugly. This got ugly. This has the potential to be like, I don't know. Last year was ugly, right? This year has the potential, even with them making the playoffs, to be so much uglier than last year, because it really is starting to feel like everything is just coming apart at the seams here. The Winnipeg Jets, that used to be an extremely tight unit at all points, just looks like it's getting torn off into a bunch of different directions, and no one seems to be backing anyone. At this stage, management doesn't look like it's backing the players. Players don't look like they're backing management. No one seems to be kind of doing the jobs they're doing. And I just watch Rick Bowness night after night after night trot out and have this look on his face of like, nothing is working. Nothing I'm doing here is getting a response. It's just the same play. Someone said it earlier on. It's the same play night after night after night. The Jets come out, their games look the same. They get outshot. They start slow. They take penalties. They look fragile when they get scored on. This is a mess.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And like I said, we're going to learn a lot about this group in the last stretch here. And some of the answers some people may not like, and some answers may be surprising. So anyways, we should go for a quick hit. If you have any real estate needs, folks, you can contact our main man, Lou Furlan. If you're buying, if you're selling, if you're looking to just see what the place down the street might be worth, or maybe you're looking to move into another neighborhood, Lou is your guy at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty. You can reach him at 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@loufurlan.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. And his website with all of his listings is www.loufurlan.ca. Lou Furlan, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community. And we thank him for his support of this program that we enjoy doing every night, no matter what it looks like on the ice. We had a fun day today, Sean. It was a bit quiet, but we had a couple of fun hits. It's been a excellent last couple of days, and folks who were in the chat room that joined us yesterday for our trade deadline extravaganza with Sammy the Scarf Cosentino, thank you for your awesome support. Tons of viewers on YouTube, on Twitter, and in the podcast realm. We know it's a dated show, but we love doing the pop-ups. And Sean, you mentioned it to me, we're right around the 2-year anniversary, and we would not be here still without the great support that we've seen. The show is growing immensely. We're having a blast each and every game that we get to chat with people. The community we've created is such a fun thing. We've got, over 250,000 downloads. We've had, almost 500,000 YouTube views. The fact that more than 250,000 people have tuned in, or there have been 250,000 impressions, is absolutely awesome. And it speaks to the passion of the fan base, which is evident both on the show itself and in terms of how they follow the team that they enjoy watching on most nights.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, I also wanted to give a shout out to another one of our sponsors that we're absolutely delighted to have on board in the Cambrian Credit Union. They've been here since season 1, and just wanted to say, if you're thinking of investing, invest in the Cambrian GIC and earn a higher rate than your savings account with a guaranteed return. All deposits guaranteed without limit by the Deposit Guarantee Corporation of Manitoba. Check out Cambrian's GIC rates at cambrian.mb.ca/rates and book an appointment online and also meet online. Thank you to Cambrian for being along for the ride here. And I guess it's time to hand out our home field award at this time. I am going to highlight that comment. Just give me a second here, Ken. Just wanted to say the Home Field Dig Deeper Award, as you all know, is for comments that stand out in the show. And the one that we are choosing for today is TK, who says, you also can't get players to play a different way. They have been soft for 4 years. They aren't going to change now, maybe for a short time, but not for the season. It goes back to a point that a lot of people are making, and we go back to this. Like, I think Kevin Cheveldayoff's in a bad spot, but I think this is what happens when you try something one last time. You want something to work. You want it to work. You want it to work. And you give it a try one last time. Moving on from something that you've strung along for a really long time is ugly. I think that's what we're seeing right now. Again, I think this is, to me, it feels like something of the Winnipeg Jets and what they've been since basically 2016-17 is dying a little bit today, because to me, this marks the intention of this organization to go in a different direction in the off season. But thank you, TK, for your comment. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you for the winning comment. And just like TK, Homefield is always going to dig deeper to find the best marketing solution for your company. Find out how at myhomefield.ca. That's it for us, Ken. I got to say, this felt like a challenging show because you know what? Usually I'm able to kind of get in the direction of like formulating everything that's happened, but there's just so much here, so many questions. It's kind of tough to wrap your head around the whole thing. Like I said, I felt stilted in this tonight. Probably starting off the show on mute for the first 5 minutes probably didn't help the situation. But Jets are in a tough spot here. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. The next 4 games are going to be extremely telling about where this team ends up, and those next 4 games will play out on Sportsnet. Hockey night in Canada, Monday night hockey, Wednesday night hockey. We've got the Sharks here on Monday, the Minnesota Wild, which is going to be an interesting one based on their pickups. And I mean, what a conversation that will be if any of their new players end up putting them over the top in a game that by that point is getting extremely, extremely important. And then, of course, wrapping up in Hockey night in Canada the following Saturday, going down to see Paul Maurice and his Florida Panthers. It's all going to be unfolding on Sportsnet. We're happy to have you along for the ride. Sammy the Scarf is going to be on one of those games, and an interesting one tomorrow on Saturday night. Harn Ryan Singh is going to be getting the call tomorrow. Also, HBO, this is neat, Ken. HBO is going to be following him around the rink, documenting his day. That's going to be neat. Rennie's going to do his best to stay absolutely as far away from the HBO cameras as he possibly can.
Yeah, that's your style.
That's my style. Thanks, Ken. You did a great job. Thank you, chat room, for everything. And I just want to say, if you appreciate the conversations happening in these spaces, please appreciate our sponsors who fight at every turn to keep these conversations happening in those spaces. For us, that's the Cambrian Credit Union, Homefield, Lou Ferland, the Johnston Group, TransCanada Brewing Company, and of course, Frankie and the boys at Vittorio Rossi. Thank you so much.
Push that button today. Push that button today.
Let's get out of the show the way we're supposed to get out of it with our extra.
Talk tomorrow, folks. Thanks again.
Tomorrow night. See you later.
The Kenny and Renny Show is brought to you by Homefield, Cambrian Credit Union, Lou Ferland, TransCanada Brewing, Vittorio Rossi, and Johnston Group.